So what's good, y'all? Today I'm going to talk about how do you give a pitch in Zoom that is going to get the outcome you want. Whether you need to impress investors, whether you're trying to win a startup competition, or you're pitching some customers. What do you need to do differently in Zoom than you would in an in-person pitch? So let's start with your delivery and how you express it. You want to be emphatic. You want to use your hands, make sure that you're using hand gestures. And you want to have a very animated face. You want to use facial expressions and feel free to modulate your voice a little bit just to give it that impact. Whereas in person, they would be able to sense all that by your in-person presence. But because you're doing it over Zoom, the signal is not as rich. So if you amplify your delivery a little bit, that will convey some of that energy that much better. Another thing is you want to look at the camera. One thing that we all do in Zoom is we see ourselves there and we check ourselves out. We look at ourselves just to make sure, do we look okay, all that, and we look at other people. But what we want to do during this pitch is we want to connect with whoever's on the other side of it. And the way you do that is by eye contact. The way you make eye contact with Zoom is looking at the camera because that's what they're going to see. And another thing to think about when you're giving pitches is this is a general principle when you're doing anything in Zoom versus in person. Is in person, people are going to pay attention. They're going to look and they'll be concentrating. But we don't feel that same element when we are pitching virtually. So if people look maybe not as energetic as you would like, don't sweat that. That's just people's normal face when they're looking at Zoom. And it doesn't mean that you're doing a bad job necessarily. So we've talked about the delivery. Let's go into slide decks. What's different about slides? There's two main things I want to cover. The first one is that you want to use smaller fonts, or you have that ability to use smaller fonts. We always advise use big fonts because when you're pitching in person, you don't know where the monitor is going to be placed. And it might turn out that one of the most important people in the room who's got bad eyesight doesn't have a good chair, at least their seating position is such that they can't really read your deck. And that's why we advise you to use larger fonts. But in Zoom, when you're pitching in this way, everyone has their computer set up in the way that they like. And so they're going to be able to see whatever it is you present when you screen share your slide deck. Now, that being said, I'm not saying use a small font and pack it full of information. The goal of a pitch is to get interest, right? Is to get them engaged and excited about what you are. It's not for them to perfectly understand your business. But you can use smaller fonts and give a little bit more detail versus having to make sure that your fonts are large and readable in every particular situation. Another thing about presenting in Zoom is that you don't want to put critical information in the top right area of your slide deck. I mean, right around here. The reason is that when your audience is watching you in Zoom, their default when you screen share is that they'll see the deck, but your image is going to be up in the top right. That's the default placement where Zoom puts it. And if you have something crucial there, your image of you talking, appearing there, might actually cover that up. So those are the biggest things to think about as far as slide decks. Finally, the thing that I would recommend to make sure that your pitch in Zoom is great, it's the same thing I would recommend when you do it in person, which is practice, right? Set up a dry run where you have a coworker or a friend witness your pitch on the other end of a Zoom call just for you to practice it and get used to the rhythm and flow of it. Get their feedback, see what they think. In addition, you can record it very, very easily. That's something where you just hit record and deliver that pitch, and then you can watch it back later and see where are areas for improvement. But if you practice, you'll be in a much better situation than if you don't. And this just goes for any type of pitch. So we're just hitting the high points here. There's probably a lot more we could go into, but if you follow these basic steps, you'll be in great shape for your pitch in Zoom to be fantastic. Good luck. Peace.